Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on something pretty vital for anyone thinking about studying, working, or, moving to an English-speaking country. We're talking about the IELTS, the International English Language Testing System. It's
hmm
recognized like everywhere. Over 12,500 organizations trust it. So, yeah, getting a handle on it is pretty crucial.
Absolutely. Think of it like, well, your passport for those kinds of opportunities. And it's not just one single test, is it? You've
Right.
got the academic one, mainly if you're aiming for university, undergrad, or postgrad.
Okay.
And then there's the general training test. That's more for things like vocational training, maybe study below degree level, or immigration purposes.
Gotcha.
And we should probably give a quick nod to IELTS for UKV too.
Mm-hmm.
That's specifically for UK visa stuff.
Okay, right. So different versions, but the core skills they test are the same.
Exactly. Listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Those are the four.
And it takes about, what, 2 hours and 45 minutes altogether?
Roughly, yeah. Though the speaking test might be on a different day sometimes. You have to check that.
Right. So our mission today is to really, dig into the strategies, the insights, basically how to tackle this thing successfully. We're pulling from guides, expert advice, even some real experiences.
Yeah, exactly. We've looked through the official stuff, prep materials, and like you said, even what test takers themselves are saying. Let's maybe kick things off with a real fundamental grammar.
Grammar, okay. Sounds a bit basic, maybe, but it's actually huge, isn't it? Especially for writing and speaking.
Oh, absolutely. Sources say grammar can make up like 25% of your score in those sections.
Wow, a quarter of the score. That's significant.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they assess it. It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
It boils down to two main areas: grammatical range and accuracy.
Range and accuracy. Okay, what's the difference?
Well, range is about showing you can use different types of sentences,
Yeah.
simple ones, complex ones, a good variety.
Got it. Showing off your toolkit.
Exactly. And accuracy is, well, pretty much what it sounds like. How often you get it right,
Yeah.
making few mistakes and ones that don't, get in the way of understanding.
So you need both to score high. You need the variety, and you need to be correct most of the time.
That's the idea.
Hmm.
You need to show you can handle complexity, but handle it accurately.
Makes sense. So this complete guide for IELTS grammar we looked at, it flags some common mistakes people make. Let's talk about those. Subject-verb agreement first. Seems simple, but
It does seem simple,
yeah.
but it catches people out, making sure your verb matches if the subject is singular or plural.
Like the man has versus the men have.
Exactly. Those are clear cut, but sometimes you get longer sentences stuff between the subject and the verb, and that's where it gets easier to slip up.
Right, I can see that. Okay, what's next? Conditionals. Apparently there are 5 types. That sounds complicated.
Oh, yeah, conditionals can be tricky. There are five main ones people talk about. The key is really understanding the sort of time or reality they're talking about.
Mm.
So the zero conditional is for like general truths.
Yeah.
If water reaches 100 degrees Celsius, it boils.
Yeah,
Always true.
right. Fact.
Then the first conditional is for possible future things. If it rains tomorrow, I'll take an umbrella.
Mm.
Could happen.
Okay, possible future.
Second conditional is for hypothetical stuff.
Yeah.
Unlikely situations now or in the future. If I were a cat, I'd sleep all day. Not going to happen, but we're imagining it.
Right, the dream.
Huh. Third conditional looks back at the past, at things that didn't happen. If I had studied harder, I would have passed. Regret, basically.
Okay, unreal past.
And then there's the mixed conditional, which kind of combines past and present future.
Yeah.
If I hadn't missed the train, I would be there now. Past condition, present result.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a lot to keep straight. So focusing on the time reference is key.
Exactly. Don't worry too much about memorizing the names. Just grasp the core idea and structure for each.
Good advice. Okay, moving on. Word order. Getting words in the right place in sentences and questions, also important for clarity.
Absolutely crucial. It makes your English sound natural and easy to understand. For a basic statement, it's usually subject, verb, object, right? I have played basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And often, things like adverbs of time go at the end. I have played basketball for 6 years. A common mistake is putting it in the wrong spot, like, I have played for 6 years basketball. Sounds a bit clunky.
Yeah, it does. Now, what about when we form questions? The order flips, doesn't it?
Usually does, yeah.
Yeah.
You typically put the auxiliary verb before the subject. So instead of saying, you have played basketball, like a statement, you'd
Right.
ask, have you played basketball? That inversion signals it's a question.
Got it. Okay, punctuation time. Commas. Those tiny marks can cause big problems, huh?
Oh, definitely. The comma conundrum. Using too many or not using them when you should can really mess up the clarity.
So what are the common traps?
Well, one is missing them after introductory words or phrases, like you should have a comma after "unfortunately" at the start of a sentence. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Another big one is when you join two complete sentences, independent clauses, with a word like "and," "but," or "so." You generally need a comma before that connecting word.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The woman jumped on the scooter and she drove towards the station.
Hmm.
See the comma before "and." It connects two full ideas.
Okay, I see. And what about this thing called a comma splice?
Ah, yes. That's when you try to link two complete sentences using only a comma. Like, I go shopping every Saturday. I buy clothes from different stores. Generally, yeah. It's considered an error in formal writing. You need something stronger. A period is best. I go shopping every Saturday. I buy clothes. Or you could use that comma with "and," or maybe a semicolon if the ideas are closely related.
Okay, break them up or connect them properly.
Exactly.
All right, last grammar point. Sentence fragments. What are those?
Fragments are basically pieces of sentences trying to stand alone. They're incomplete thoughts.
How so?
Well, they might be missing a subject, like just saying, shut the window on his hand. Who shut? It should be, the boy shut the window.
Okay. Missing subject?
Or missing a verb, like displaying his trophy. What about it? The full sentence needs a verb. The Olympian was displaying his trophy.
Right.
And sometimes it's a dependent clause left hanging, like after I start university. That needs a main clause to make sense. I'll come home less often after I start university.
So make sure every sentence has at least a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought.
Precisely. Avoiding those fragments, fixing comma issues, getting word order right, it all adds up for that grammar score.
That's a really helpful run through. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Vocabulary, another huge piece of the puzzle, right?
Absolutely massive. Like grammar, it's flagged as being worth about 25% for writing and speaking. And, of course, you need it for listening and reading, too, especially understanding synonyms.
Yeah, you can't get far without the words. So we looked at this source, IELTS Vocabulary Mastery. Had a 6-step plan for learning vocab effectively. Sounds useful.
It's a really solid, practical approach. Much better than just trying to memorize lists.
Okay, walk us through it. Step 1.
Step 1. Enjoy your source. Find stuff to read or listen to that you actually find interesting. A magazine, a website, a podcast, whatever.
Makes sense. You'll pay more attention.
Exactly. Step 2. Get a notebook. Dedicate one just for vocab. Step 3. Consume the source. Read or listen, and when you hit a new word, try to guess its meaning from the context first. This guessing part is apparently really important for making it stick in your memory.
Okay, guess first. Then what?
Then, step 4, note down the new words in your notebook. Don't just write the word, though. Step 5 is key. Look up the meaning, but also find example sentences. See what words it usually goes with. Those are collocations. Find synonyms, antonyms. Check the pronunciation. The whole picture.
I understand it fully, not just the definition.
Precisely. Maybe even draw a little picture if that helps. And the final step, step 6, is crucial. Review regularly. Look back at your notes after a day, a week, a month. Actively try to use the words.
That sounds way more effective than flashcards with single words on them.
Yeah, the source really advises against just rote learning from lists. Context is everything. And it suggests aiming for maybe 15 new words a day learned this way is realistic and effective.
15 a day through context. Okay. And where can people find good sources for this kind of learning?
Oh, lots of great places online. The force mentioned things like National Geographic, New Scientist, The Economist, History Today, Time, BBC World News, quality journalism, basically.
And podcasts too, right?
Definitely. Podcasts on topics you like are fantastic for hearing vocabulary used naturally.
Great suggestions. Now, it's always good to hear from the trenches, so to speak. We found some insights from someone on Reddit who scored a band 8 on the academic test. What did they share? Let's start with listening.
Okay, yeah, this was interesting. They mentioned that in the real test, the spelling of names or places in the recordings can be much faster than in some practice materials.
Oh, good to know.
So their advice was, try to really focus and remember the whole word rather than scrambling to jot down letter by letter and maybe missing the next bit.
That's a really practical tip. Anything else for listening?
They also stressed using that little bit of time you get between sections to look ahead at the next set of questions and read every question at least twice before the audio even starts. Really prime yourself.
Makes sense. Prepare for what's coming. What about reading?
For reading, they specifically said to practice true-false not given questions more, because those can be tricky.
Notorious ones.
Yeah. And for matching headings to paragraphs, they suggested focusing more on the overall context and flow between lines, not just hunting for isolated keywords.
Interesting. A deeper read.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And a time-saving tip they used was reading all the questions for a passage first, then trying to keep multiple questions in mind as they read through, answering them as they found the info.
Oh, multitasking while reading sounds intense but efficient.
Potentially, yeah. And for long-term prep, they really pushed just reading widely books, articles, and watching TV shows without subtitles to improve general comprehension.
Good habits. And a very practical tip for test day.
Write reading and listening answers in all else caps. Apparently, it avoids any ambiguity with handwriting.
Ah, clever. Okay, let's talk writing. This person felt they wrote too much.
Yeah, they cautioned against overwriting. Focus on answering the question directly and relevantly, not just filling space. Quality over quantity. This helps with time, too, leaving space to review.
Good point.
They also really recommended studying high-scoring sample essays, band 8 or 9, to actively pick up useful vocabulary and complex sentence structures, and practicing linking words plus vocabulary specifically for Task 1 graphs and Task 2 essays.
So, model the best. And keep ideas simple, but use good language.
That was a gist. Clear ideas, rich vocabulary.
And finally, the speaking test. The advice was?
Pretty simple, actually. Stay calm. That was the main thing. See the examiner as just a neutral person doing their job.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But they said don't rush. It's okay to pause for a second to think. Just collect your thoughts. And obviously, practice speaking English regularly beforehand. Get comfortable.
Makes sense. They also mentioned some names. People known for IELTS help.
Yeah, they recommended checking out resources by people often referred to as Chris, Jay, Alex, Liz. Seems they're well-known figures in the online IELTS prep world, offering lots of materials.
Worth looking up then. Now, about that pausing and speaking. Our other sources had a slightly more detailed take, didn't they?
They did. It's a bit nuanced. A short, natural pause while you think is generally fine, especially if your overall speech is fluent. It's human. But too much pausing or really long, awkward silences can bring down your fluency score. Sometimes using a little filler word, can actually sound smoother than just silence.
Okay, so fillers aren't always bad.
Not necessarily. If used naturally and sparingly, it's also about why you're pausing. Hesitating because you're searching for an idea is different and potentially more problematic than pausing briefly because you're looking for the perfect word.
Right, context matters. Okay, let's dive deeper into strategies specifically for the listening and reading tests, pulling from the official IELTS advice. What are the key things for listening?
Okay, the IELTS Listening Test Tips resource had some really concrete points. First, always use the time before the audio to read the questions. Understand what type of answer you need, a number, a date, a name, and underline keywords.
Active reading beforehand.
Exactly. For form-filling tasks, listen super carefully for those specifics. Names, times, addresses. Easy to miss here. When you get maps or plans, listen for direction words, left, right, north, south, and prepositions of place next to, opposite, behind. Also, describing words, size, shape. They suggest maybe scribbling LR or compass points on the paper to help track.
Well, like a quick visual aid. Smart.
Yeah. For part 3, the conversations, reading the questions first helps you understand who's talking to whom and anticipate what they might discuss.
Context again.
Always. And for part 4, the lecture, listen for signposting words. Firstly, next, in contrast, finally. They signal the structure. Also, pay attention to where the speaker puts stress or changes intonation that often highlights key info.
Good cues to listen for. Anything else major?
Word count. If it says one word only, stick to it. Numbers can be figures, 7, or word 7, that's usually fine. And spelling. It has to be correct. Use that 10-minute transfer time on the paper test to double-check everything.
Crucial details. Okay, loads of good stuff for listening. How about reading strategies?
Right, reading. The tips emphasize that it tests different skills. Skimming for the general idea, scanning for specific facts, and reading closely for arguments or opinions.
So you need to shift gears.
You do. And time management is absolutely critical. Aim for about 20 minutes per section, roughly.
Okay.
The general advice is read the questions first, then skim the passage for gist, noting keywords. Then go back and answer the questions. Try to answer everything, guess if you have to, and check if you have time left.
Read questions first seems to be a recurring theme.
It often helps focus your reading. For specific question types, like matching headings, you can read the headings first or the text first, see what works for you, but cross off options as you go.
Makes sense. And those true, false, not given ones.
Key there is knowing the answers usually appear in order in the text and really understanding the difference. True means the text explicitly agrees. False means it explicitly contradicts. And not given means the information simply isn't there. You can't infer it.
That distinction is vital.
It really is. And the overall message for reading, like listening, is practice, practice, practice. Use official materials, sample tests, the progress check service they offer. Get familiar with the formats and timing.
So it seems like understanding the test mechanics and question types is just as important as the English itself. Let's talk overall preparation. It's more than just doing practice tests, right?
Definitely. Keith's Speaking Academy made a really interesting point about this. They reckon effective prep is maybe 70% actually improving your general English level and only like 30% learning specific exam techniques.
70-30. That's surprising. Many people probably focus more on the 30%, the tricks.
Exactly. They might focus too much on exam strategy without having the underlying language skills solid enough. So, job one is often boosting your overall English. And they strongly suggest starting with a mock test to see where you actually stand right now.
Get a baseline. Okay. And how much time does this all take, realistically?
Well, it varies hugely, obviously. But if your English is already pretty good, maybe near your target score, they suggest 6 to 8 weeks, studying maybe 2-3 hours a day, could be enough to nail down the exam format for all 4 parts.
Okay. And if you need to actually improve your score significantly, like jump up a whole band.
That takes more time.
Ah.
Cambridge Assessment estimates around 200 hours of guided learning to improve by 1 IELTS band. But again, that depends on your background, how quickly you learned, how much English you use day to day.
200 hours, that's a significant commitment.
It is. It highlights that improving language level takes time. Just for the speaking test technique, though, if your English is okay, maybe a week of focused study and a week of practice might do it.
So structure seems important. Following a course, maybe?
Yeah, a structured course can be really helpful. It guides you, integrates the skills, keeps things organized. But if you're studying alone, those free speaking study plans from Keith Academy could be useful too. They have plans for 2 days, 1 week, 1 month, 2 months.
Different timelines.
Right. But you need to be realistic. The 2-day or 1-week plans aren't going to magically improve your English level. They're mostly about getting familiar with the speaking test format itself.
Makes sense. And how should someone use these plans effectively?
Pick the one that fits your time. Download it. Set aside regular time in a quiet place. Consistency helps. Follow the steps, use the links they provide, and really engage with their learning cycle idea.
Learning cycle.
Yeah. Notice how words, phrases are used, repeat them, note down the usage details, collocations, etc. Create your own sentences and review regularly. It's about active learning.
Active, not passive.
Okay, that leads nicely into understanding the scoring. How does it actually work? It's a 0 to 9 scale, right?
That's right. Band scores from 0 to 9 for each section, and then an overall score.
And for speaking and writing, it's examiners marking against criteria.
Exactly. For speaking, they look at fluency and coherence, lexical resource, vocab, pronunciation, and grammatical range and accuracy. 4 criteria.
Okay.
For writing, it's task achievement or response, depending if it's task 1 or 2, coherence and cohesion, how it throws, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. Again, 4 criteria. And sometimes, especially for borderline scores, more than one examiner might mark your writing or speaking.
Ensures fairness.
Okay.
And listening and rating are more about right versus wrong answers.
Pretty much. You get a raw score out of 40 correct answers. Then that converts to a band score. The conversion can vary slightly, but as a rough guide for academic reading, maybe 39-40 right is a band 9, while 30-32 might be a band 7.
And general training reading is different. A bit, yeah. Often need more correct answers for the same band. Like 40 might be needed for band 9 and maybe 34-35 for band 7. Again, approximate.
And listening.
Listening scale is the same for both academic and general. Around 39-40 correct for band 9, maybe 30-31 for band 7. These are just examples from the official site.
Okay. And then the overall band score, how's that worked out?
They just average your 4 individual scores, listening, reading, writing, speaking. Then they round that average to the nearest whole or half band.
Is there a specific rounding rule?
Yep. If the average ends in .25, it rounds up to the next half band. For example, 6.25 becomes 6.5. If it ends in .75, it rounds up to the next whole band. Ergo, 6.75 becomes 7.0. Anything else below .25 or .75 rounds down to the nearest half or whole band?
Right. Good to know how that final number comes about. Okay, we're nearing the end of our deep dive. Any final practical tips for the actual test day?
Yeah, some simple but crucial ones.
Mm.
First, triple check your test date, time, and exactly where you need to go. Get the logistics right.
Don't want to be late or lost.
Definitely not. During the test, read every single question really carefully. Make sure you know what it's asking. Keep an eye on the clock. Be aware of the suggested timings for each section or task.
Pace yourself.
Exactly. And try as much as possible just to relax and trust the preparation you've done. Be confident.
Easier said than done, but good advice.
And finally, know when you'll get your results. For paper tests, it's usually 13 days later. Computer-based is much faster, like 1 to 5 days. And IELTS Online is about 6 to 8 days.
Good to manage expectations. Okay, so wrapping this all up, it feels like the big takeaway is that doing well on IELTS is this blend, isn't it? You need solid English skills first and foremost,
The foundation.
but you also really need to understand the test itself, the format, the question types, the scoring, and practice specific strategies for each part.
That's it. Perfectly. It's a combination. We really hope exploring some of these resources we've talked about, the official sites, the guides, the study plans, will help you find what works best for your own learning style.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with as you continue your IELTS prep. Remember that consistent effort and a smart, strategic approach really can make a huge difference to your confidence and your score. It can open those doors you're aiming for.
Well said.
So maybe think about it. What's the one area of IELTS prep you're going to focus on most this coming week? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.